Well, hello. Fancy seeing you here. Hello, everybody. How you doing? You just can't keep a good podcaster down. I told you I was going to drop monthly, and here I am 1 week after posting my first proper episode, which I think I posted a week after my introduction episode. You just can't keep me away from a microphone. I'm sorry. Except I'm not really. How are you, or how is everyone? My name's Sam, for anyone tuning in for the first time, and welcome to Munchkin Musings, an Oz-based podcast where me, your wannabe fourth member of the Lollipop Guild, gives you my Munchkin Musings and all things Oz. And I have a very good reason for picking up my microphone today. I actually couldn't help it. When I saw what I'm talking about today, I really just wanted someone to talk about it with, and I thought you guys would be my victim ears, and I'm glad to have you all with me on this. I hope you're good. I hope you had a lovely festive break. Happy Christmas, Happy New Year. One thing that we were all treated to in the new year that dropped very, very recently was a short film on Disney+. I had seen a trailer for this in the tail end of last year, and I had no idea what it was in that. I didn't know if it was a feature film. I didn't know if it was a TV series. I didn't know what it was. All I knew is that I was really, really interested in watching it. And I saw advertised that it was on Disney+. It dropped on the 1st of January. And as soon as I could, I just thought, I've got to watch this. And once I watched it, I thought this is something that I really, really want to talk about. So, as you might be able to tell from the title, I am talking about the short film A Friend of Dorothy, which came out on the 1st of January 2026 on Disney+, but it actually made its debut at Rain Dance Festival on the 25th of June last year. Written and directed by Lee Knight. Lee Knight is an actor, writer, and director. He's also featured as an actor in things like Much Ado About Nothing, Sherlock, and Vigil. Though he doesn't feature in this, he did obviously write and direct. The cast is Miriam Margolyes as Dorothy, Stephen Fry as Dickie, Alistair Nwachukwu as JJ, and Oscar Lloyd as Scott. Now, unlike most things I talk about on this podcast and other podcasts, I normally go into an episode recap. And it's funny, I actually have a few other episodes planned because, I mean, this podcast, it's an Oz podcast, and I said it's going to be monthly, and it will be monthly. But what I'm kind of saying to myself and to you lovely listeners is that you will be getting at least one episode a month. And if I have something that I want to talk about, or I think that we should talk about, then you might get more than once a month. And I think that's the way that I'm playing it. But on the first Friday of every month, you will be getting one episode. And if you get a few episodes sprinkled in between, who's going to stop me? Who's going to take this mic away from me? Someone should at this point. Somebody should. But today, I am not going to give you like an episode description or a title. Like I was saying, I've planned a few other episodes, and it's funny, one of them is the 1982 animated adaptation of The Wizard of Oz, and I was doing the description of the topic, and it's so funny because like when it's another adaptation of The Wizard of Oz, listen, I've only done one so far, and you get to the point where they're all very similar, and that may be boring, but I'm sure that people will be interested to see how it differs from other source material. But this is a short film that is not a Wizard of Oz adaptation. It is a short film set very much in the real world, and I'm not going to give you a full summary of the plot because I really, really think you should go watch it. Like I said, it's available on Disney+. It's only about 20 minutes. It's quite a short film, and it's just fantastic. I will get to a point when I talk about my thoughts, and that will get spoilery, so I'll give you a spoiler warning if you want to come back to that after you've watched it. But for a summary that I actually got from the Norwich Film Festival, so I'm assuming this was given by the creatives that doesn't spoil the plot, here's a little taster as to what it's about. Dorothy is a lonely widow whose body is failing, but her mind remains as bright as ever. When 17-year-old JJ accidentally kicks his football into her garden, he upends Dorothy's daily routine of pills, prunes and crosswords, and an unlikely friendship blossoms. Despite being worlds apart in every way, the two come to find they have more in common than they could ever imagine. And that's all I'm going to say. That's the description on the Film Fest website. That's all I'm going to say. I really, really would like you to watch this. And you don't just have to take my word for it. It has won various awards. The Odense International Film Festival, which was August last year, it was nominated for the Audience Award. It won. In the Holly Shorts Film Festival, it was nominated for Best Drama, and it won that too. And I'm sure there'll be plenty more awards going its way because it truly is a really gorgeous short film. I thought I'd touch quickly on the history of the phrase, a friend of Dorothy. Now, this is a phrase that I'm sure a lot of people have heard, but it may not be one that everyone's heard. It's so common to me as a queer man, but it basically became a term of safety and comfort for gay men to use around each other. So Dorothy in this film talks about a friend of Dorothy and what that is, and JJ, the character, doesn't know. And I'll talk about this because I don't think it's particularly spoilery, but she describes to him that it's based off of The Wizard of Oz. And Dorothy is a woman who met 3 men. She called them different in their own ways. Other people, especially at the time, might call them queer, which I think is interesting as well, because queer was a word that was meant to be used as odd or different or strange, and it later became a slur, but it did just mean something different. And that then became synonymous with gay men. And in a time where it wasn't safe to be openly gay, men would often ask each other, "Are you a friend of Dorothy?" Or say to someone, "I am a friend of Dorothy." And that was almost their code for saying, "I'm a homosexual." And that lent into the fact that they felt safe with Dorothy. They felt safe with Judy Garland specifically. And if you were also a friend of Dorothy, you were someone that they were safe to be around. And there's so much history and poignancy to that phrase. I believe that it was Dorothy Parker who is thought to be the original potential origin for the term. She's a writer and a critic. And it's a word that's still used today playfully, but it has had such strong meaning in history. And this whole short is sort of centered around that. And I think that's really special. Okay, we're going to start getting spoilery here, everyone. I'm going to dive into some reviews from Letterboxd and IMDb before I go into my thoughts, but there are some spoilers in these, so if you haven't seen the short, jump onto Disney+, go watch it, come back and listen to this. Over on IMDb, a 10 out of 10 review says, "I saw this at the Naples International Film Festival, and it was very moving, and I really loved the way they interjected comedy along with the drama and the tragedy of losing Dorothy. It was just a really well put together film, definitely worth the watch. From the snotty grandson to JJ and Dorothy, it was a really touching film and I can't wait to watch it again." An 8 out of 10 review says, "Throughout this short film, the neglect of the elderly by the younger generation, even by their own families, is criticised, highlighting the dehumanisation experienced by this group, which still has so much more to offer than just an inheritance." Over on Letterboxd, and I kind of think Letterboxd is, I just think everything ends up at the 3.5. That's not where I necessarily go to get my steadfast reviews, but it is a very current basis for getting reviews. Over on Letterboxd, a 3 out of 5 review says, "Art bridges generations, speaking a language felt by both the young discovering the world and the experienced who've lived it. In every stroke, sound or story, it connects us through shared emotion beyond age or time." A 3.5 out of 5 review says, "Totally predictable. But did I mind? Not at all. A Friend of Dorothy is designed to alternately make you chuckle and go, ah, and boy does it succeed. A stray thought, introducing a nice old lady to the audience by making her say, oh for fuck's sake, is usually an old and somewhat lazy joke. But if that nice lady in question is played by Miriam Margolyes, however, it's just Miriam being Miriam." And this is a really lovely review. It's actually not rated, but it says, "I feel as though I've just savoured a 20-minute bite of the sweetest cake ever baked. I needed this film today. Precisely what my spirit craved. Every society that promotes the abandonment and ensuing loneliness of our elders once their health begins to decline should be met with a barrage of explosive tomatoes. Put your dancing pants on and go read your favourite play to someone's funny grandma. Intergenerational sharing of stories, sentiments and culture heals." And I just think that is, more so than any words that I'm about to give you, perfectly ensues how I feel about this film. I think it's connecting the young and the old. I think it is sweet. I think it's bittersweet. I think that it will make you cry and also make you feel so good. It's really, really good. So my general musings before I watched this film, I thought I love Miriam Margolyes. Anything that she's in, I want to watch. I think that she's hilarious. I think that she's sweet. I also love that she is so proudly pro-Palestine and anti-Zionist. And I think that that is just a fantastic thing for a person today's age to be vocal about, especially at her age when a lot of people do just tend to sit in the sidelines. That is not someone like Miriam. So I knew I really wanted to watch this either way. I also didn't think that had any direct connection to The Wizard of Oz. I thought the title itself showed like heritage to the phrase, but I didn't see any particular like ties. It's not an adaptation of an Oz book or anything. And I also very much consider myself a friend of Dorothy. I actually, even before I'd watched this film, I made a clip of what this podcast was going to be about to post on socials. I made it before Christmas, so this hadn't even come out yet, and I included a little clip at the end because I talk about being a friend of Dorothy from the trailer for this. So it's been imbued in this podcast before I've even thought about watching it. But yeah, here are just a few of my thoughts when watching this. And again, we're going to get into spoilery territory here in case you're not already there. First of all, I think that this is so beautifully directed. I think Lee Knight did a fantastic job. I wasn't aware of his work before watching this, and I also wasn't aware that he both wrote and directed it. And now that I know that, I think that makes such perfect sense, because the cohesion between how it's shot, the choices that have been made with the cinematography, and the words you're hearing being spoken are just the perfect marriage of two. It really, really is an amazing thing to watch. And I also think that the acting to pair with it from the main cast was stellar. Miriam and Alistair do a fantastic job. Their repertoire between each other was great. Miriam Margolyes, obviously, I have been aware of her work before. But Alistair Nwachukwu, I was not aware of your game. I did not know what you had to offer. You were new to me, sir, and I cannot wait to see what you're in next, because he was fantastic in this. He was soft and tender at times. He was shy. He was curious. He was just so believable and real. It was nice to see Stephen Fry in basically a cameo role. I also think when you have actors like Miriam and Stephen in something like this, it gives it a gravitas and a weight to the general public that no matter what the quality of the short may have without them, I think that it just gives a little extra credibility for the general public to go in and watch something like this. Oscar Lloyd as Scott, who's the grandson, was very fun. I do think out of the main cast, I think he was the most acty. I think that is something to do with his type of character. He's playing the snotty grandson, as one of the reviews said, and he's very much like, oh, okay, well, what are we doing here then, Grandma? Da, da, da. And it just felt a little bit like on the nose for snotty grandson. But he served the purpose very well in the film. You're not meant to like his character, and you don't like his character, which means that the actor did a very good job. Also, a random note, I think maybe just because of my line of work, I work in TV and film, the locations were great. I thought that all the locations for this were really, really good. And I was watching this with my friend Kyle, and he was saying, oh my God, the house is beautiful. Like where they're shooting is beautiful. And I think how they dressed the scene with all these sort of homoerotic paintings and the books and books and books lining the bookshelves was really, really well done. And I just thought that was fantastic. But basically, JJ kicks his ball into the garden of Dorothy, and he sort of comes and says, I think I kicked my ball over. And as someone said in a review, it opens with her, getting her pills, and she can't quite open her prune lid, but she goes to do a crossword, and then when she hears the doorbell go and she's just ready to sit down, she just goes, oh, for fuck's sake. And I just thought that was such a good way of jumping into the story and knowing exactly who this character is and why Miriam was cast in the role. And he clearly isn't very good at football. She teases him for it, and she says, well, are you better at opening cans of prunes? And so she invites him in, and he opens the prunes for her. And while she's getting the key to unlock a back door to get his football, he's perusing these rows and rows of books and plays that she has in her living room. And he picks one up called Bent, which is a queer play. And as soon as she comes in, he drops it out of sort of fear and shame. And she comes over and picks it up for him, and she reads, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry. And she looks at him and she says, never apologise for an interest in literature. And she gets to talking to him, and she can tell what he's trying to hide. I don't think he's accepted it himself, but he clearly is a young queer man trying to hide it. And he says, his mum wants him to play football like his brother, but he enjoys acting, but that's only a hobby. That's not something he really wants to pursue. And the old lady, she says, I've helped a lot of people. She's clearly a philanthropist. She says, I've helped people through Raya before, and has to explain what Raya, the acting school, is and how she collects plays. She's been collecting different plays for over 50 years and puts money into theatres and stuff. It's a huge passion of hers. And he kind of passes it off for himself as just a hobby. She's like, it's not just a hobby. And she tells him to pick a book from the shelf, and she suggests one to him, and it's another queer play that I definitely should have written down, and you will definitely have to tell me when you go watch this film, because I can't remember it off the top of my head. But he reads it for her. So she specifically chooses a segment for him, and he reads it to her, and it's almost like a coming out scene. It's a man confessing his love for this other character called Henry. And while reading it, he sort of realises what he's reading, but leans into it and just acts incredibly. And she cries. She's crying watching him. But again, you get this amazing humour interjected, and she just sits and she's like, oh, for fuck's sake, my God. As if to be like, you're fantastic. And he scares himself, I think, by how easy it is for him to tap into this queer side. And he kind of runs away, and he's like, I've got to go. And she chases after him. She's like, wait, no, if you're going, please take a play, borrow a play. And he sort of stops and turns around. And she says to him, oh, thank you. Yeah, borrow one of my plays. It's already in your bag. And he's like, what? And she had already slipped in bent into his backpack. She says, same time tomorrow for pruning. And it's funny because when she said this, I read this as pruning her garden, like they were going to garden together, but she literally means like, you're going to open my tin of prunes, because there's a running joke about how she has to have prunes every day to be regular. And you see this beautiful friendship blossom between them, where he goes to help with the tins, he reads plays to her, he's like developing his acting skills, but you see them just hanging out. They have dinner together and they just grow this amazing friendship. And one thing that's really bittersweet that people touched on it in the reviews, but I haven't spoken about yet, is that the film actually opens with her will being read by Stephen Fry, who's sort of an attorney figure, with her grandson and JJ being sat there, and it's clear that they're both somehow written into the will, and the grandson's really agitated and thinks that the other guy's coming in to steal something from his grandma, who he clearly doesn't have much affinity for. And so this whole time you're watching this friendship grow and blossom, you're aware that it's coming to an end. You're aware it doesn't go on forever. You know where you're going. And that just creates all the more bittersweet a vibe that it makes it even better, as sad as that is. There's a really, really lovely scene while he's getting to know her, getting to know her, and he's in a corner shop. And I have a lot of fear when I watch queer things like this. I remember watching Heartstopper for the first time, and I just kept thinking something was going to go wrong. I thought he's going to get beaten up, or he's going to be bullied, or something awful is going to happen. And when I was watching it with Nick, my partner, he kept saying to me, like, no, just good things can happen to queer people. Just watch. It'll be fine. And it was fine. And it caught me off guard. And we see him in this corner shop, and he turns around, there's this guy looking at him. And my initial feeling was, oh God, like he's going to get beaten up. So someone's going to, have a homophobic attack or something. But after a second, you realise that no, he's looking at this guy, and the guy's looking at him, and they're looking at each other. And it's a moment between them, and you suddenly, there's this moment that I thought was going to be scary for a queer person to watch, and suddenly it's beautiful. And that really caught me off guard in a lovely way. And there's this cute little kid with a lollipop, like, it stops him from, I guess, pursuing the guy, because this kid's staring at them both like, there's a vibe between you two. And I think it freaks him out and he leaves. I was also a bit worried, like I said, about expecting the worst, that he was going to turn up after that, and the grandson opens the door, and I thought, oh God, she's dead, or he's going to find her dead body, or something awful is going to happen. But I mean, something bad did happen. She slipped and broke her foot, because, Dorothy, her body is failing her. She's getting older, and she slipped and hurt herself. And she's talking about, maybe being put in a home, and you learn that her son, once her husband passed away, her son moved to the other side of the world, and he doesn't see her anymore. And there's a really sad line about how she says that her son had moved to the other side of the world and created this life for himself, and that there wasn't room for her in it. And I just thought that was so sad, and really showed the loneliness that older people can meet. And at this point, you're really starting to get to understand them as a pair. As I mentioned earlier, when he was first reading the play to her, she refers the term Friend of Dorothy. And he's like, what's that? And she's like, oh, it's, from The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy, played by Judy Garland. You know Judy Garland? He's like, nope. And she's like, you don't know Judy Garland? And he was like, no. And that's so alien to me. I'm like, oh God, everyone, it's a birthright. You're born knowing who Judy Garland is. But my friend who I watched with, Kyle, he didn't watch The Wizard of Oz growing up, and he knows how much it means to me. And a few years ago, I was like, have you ever seen it? And he was like, no, never seen it. And I was like, well, you have to watch it. And we watched it together, and he, experienced the Wicked Witch's cackle for the first time, and paying no attention to the man behind the curtain and all that. And it was new to him. And I felt like I was watching it through his eyes for the first time. And that was how I felt with this, when he was like, oh yeah, I remember I didn't know who Judy Garland was, and I didn't know this. And it's so funny to me. But she explains to him the meaning of, Dorothy having her odd friends that were all different in their own way. And the word queer kept ringing in my ears. She didn't use that word, but that was how, I think, like I said earlier, at the time they would have been described. That then ties through, and when she finally tells him her name, obviously it's earlier, I'm jumping about a bit, but when he asks her name, she says it's Dorothy. And so by this point, he's become a friend of Dorothy's. And they have this really sweet moment after she's hurt herself, where she just tells him how much he means to her, and how when you're older, people forget that you have a soul and they leave you behind. And she was like, I feel like maybe even for the first time, you're somebody who really sees me. And he sort of holds her hand. He says, well, I feel like you're the first person to properly see me too. And of course, he's talking about his queerness, his gayness. And she saw that in him and she accepted him for it. And they're both sort of crying with each other. And then you move on and you cut back to the present day when she's passed. And you find out that the house is going to her son and the grandson's going to get 50 grand, and the grandson's like, oh, thank God, I thought you were going to get money. And in the will, she leaves her entire play collection to JJ. And the grandson's like, oh, you get the Dusty books, great, cool, we're done here, bye, and leaves. And Stephen Fry's character says, oh, there's a note here that says you should look in Act 2, Scene 1 in the book. So when he leaves, he opens the book on Act 2, Scene 1, and there is an envelope that says, don't let it just be a hobby, with a Raya flyer underneath it. And he opens the envelope and sees that there's a cheque for £50,000 in there as well. And it's enough money to take him through tuition at Raya. And it's Dorothy's last gift to JJ for him to not let this hobby just be a hobby, and for him to pursue what he loves, not what his mother thinks he should love, not what his family thinks he should do. And I just thought it was so soft and so tender. And this is one of the reasons I love The Wizard of Oz, is that it's that phrase, A Friend of Dorothy, created such a meaning separate to the source material to so many people. That phrase and that meaning is embodied into this film. And it just felt so rich and so meaningful and so deep. And I really, really recommend everybody go and watch this short film. It's fantastic. And I had the best time watching it. And I had an even better time talking about it with you today. So thank you for listening to me, and thank you for indulging me in this sort of special bonus episode. Like I said, with Munchkin Musings, you'll be getting episodes every single month, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of times I want to talk to you about things in between the month, and you won't be able to get rid of me. I've already planned a lot of future episodes. I've been reading, like I said a couple of episodes ago, the original Wizard of Oz books. I'm now on, I think, the 4th book, and I'm loving them, so there'll be lots of episodes about those. I've also realised that a lot of people, myself included to a point, don't really realise what all the latter adventures for Dorothy and Oz and all the characters are. I'm so excited to talk about those with you soon. But for now, I will bid you adieu. Thank you so much, dear listener, for listening to this episode of Munchkin Musings with me. You can follow Munchkin Musings at munchkin.musings on TikTok and Instagram. I'm really trying to build some socials there. I've been having a lot of fun posting my Ruby Slippers series, where I'm making a replica pair of Judy Garland Ruby Slippers, and it seems like a lot of you have been enjoying that too, so thank you for watching those. You can also email me any of your Munchkin Musings over at munchkinmusingspod@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you, so I'm always available there. And thank you so much for listening to me. I'm very excited to dive into whatever the next topic will be on Munchkin Musings.